On today's Locked On Senators, the win streak is over at 5 after a 3-2 loss in Minnesota.
And adding injury to insult, unfortunately, Angus Crookshank left the game early, so we'll take a look at who some call-ups from Belleville might be.
We'll get into all that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 1016 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller, still here in St. Paul after we saw our first regulation loss ever together. The streak is over for the Ottawa Senators at 5 games, but for us, we are now 13-1-1 with our boots on the ground. I got my boots right here. I also was able to go to the game because of Game Time. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Get your first tickets with $20 off thanks to Locked On NHL. That's promo code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first ticketing purchase. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, lockedon.senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Wednesday, April 3rd, and Pillsy, my voice is gone. I'd like to apologize to you and everybody listening.
Yeah, I don't even know what happened to your voice this time. There was no flurry chance or anything like that. No. So I don't know how you lost it there, but like you mentioned, it's unfortunate. All good things must come to an end. The Senators win streak, who cares about that, really? The Locked On Senators boots on the ground win streak. That was our first regulation loss, but we've already found ways to do the spin zone. We're 13-0-1 in Canada.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And something like 5-0-1 against other Canadian teams. And that will be our next boots on the ground experience. Yep. The home closer against Montreal on April 12th or 13th, whatever the Saturday is there. That building's amazing. The XL Energy Center, if you haven't been, highly recommend going to see a game there. They have it so like the lower bowl is twice the size of the upper bowl, which most it's flipped, and it gives a really cool atmosphere.
Yeah, and the way the rink is designed, the concourse has lots of space. You're not doing the sideways shoulder move, the Assassin's Creed sifting through crowds. Like, you're just able to have lots of space. And one thing I want to say, I didn't fully realize this. The Minnesota Wild have some of the best merch in the league. Like, everyone wearing their Wild gear. I don't know. I just was like, damn, that's a sweet hat. Oh, that's a sweet sweater. Like,
you like Christmas?
Well, yeah, who doesn't?
It's all green and red.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
And we also learned, and maybe people already knew this, the Wild logo is actually a bear head.
I'm still convinced it's wolf, but you're on Team Bear. I'm on Team Wolf. It's an animal of some sort.
Which is shocking because it just looks like a landscape.
Yeah, well, you learn something new every day.
It just looks like a forest. There should be a lake on there with how many lakes, and maybe a church based on how many there are here in St. Paul, Minnesota. But no, the game itself, I mean, Ottawa fought back, 2 goals on the power play. Guys are turning around in their seats saying, hey, do you guys ever score not on the power play? I was like, buddy, you should see the power play all year. This is an anomaly. But Drake Batherson was in his bag of tricks last night. Rockstar's own goal, and then finding Jacob Chychrun, who's up to 13 goals on the year.
It's been hot lately, especially like Chychrun and Batherson on the power play. That's been a 1-2 punch that's worked really well for the Sens recently.
My locked-on player, one of my 2, was Brady Tkachuk. He extends his point streak. Well, I guess it's not a streak because he didn't have one against Chicago, but now he's up to 10 points in his last 6 games. So super impressive run from the captain. I thought he was good last night. And after rewatching the end of the game, that was a pretty dirty play from Brock Faber going up at him. So
that's what I was saying. Yeah.
So I don't know. I wonder if I wonder what's going to happen next time these two teams meet. But
It was for a while.
No, it won't be for a while. Hopefully it's at the end of next season because I'd like to do this trip again, but it's a long drive.
Yeah.
But all that to say, it's one where I think Ian Mendez, our guy, tweeted out saying this is a perfect tank loss.
Yeah, exactly. And Ross,
they played well. They played well.
We can grieve the win streak ending. We can grieve our first regulation loss together, but we will immediately spin zone it to being a good thing for the tank. So,
for sure.
That's fine.
Now, also, they deserve to lose because that was a goal that got called back. And then 2 minutes later, the hockey gods it was reminiscent of JG Pajot's goal against Carey Price in Game 6 in 2015, where the ref just blew it dead. It was wide open. It should have been a goal. And here I am still mad about it 8 years later, but still, it wasn't a goal.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and if you were mad about that goal, Ross, the Minnesota Wild fans were mad about the goal last night. That should have counted. They were losing their minds, rightfully so.
So let's talk about the game winner then, the actual game winner that went in. A second fourth line goal against for the Ottawa Senators. Minnesota gets it, and like Pinto gives it away, or like mishandles it, I'll say. Then Branny goes back to get it. He gives it away. And then a backhand. Those are hard to read off the stick, but still, you probably, in a perfect world, get a save there. It was just kind of a comedy of errors.
Yeah, just kind of a full breakdown. And you know what? I will take full responsibility for the Minnesota Wild, Shaw and Lettieri getting goals in this game. Because
Lucchini had an assist.
Yeah, Lucchini with the assist, because my whole spiel was they got no depth scoring and our fourth line is going to dominate them. Well, unfortunately, this was the carriage that the fourth liners were riding in turned into a pumpkin in this game, as no points. And it looks like,
well, everything got thrown for whack when Crooker went down early.
Yeah, but it looks like the boys are back to under 10 minutes. Although Parker Kelly, he's the guy that got elevated. He played 14:08, but Casti and Kachuk are at 9:13. So I kind of hoped that fourth line hot streak was going to continue a little longer, Ross, but you knew it had to end at some point.
It wasn't going to carry on forever. And I thought the Sens did a good job with only 11 forwards throughout most of that game. I thought Claude Giroux played one of his better games recently. He was up and down and noticeable. And Timmy's just snake bit, man. He just can't score right now. And
he was dancing.
He hit the post, man. He was so close.
Like that was one of his games where Timmy had I don't know, 5 or 6 really nice zone entries, but wasn't able to make anything of it. But he's really improved on being able to carry the puck up the ice, transition, and kind of break through that wall at the other team's blue line. So that was something we noticed from Timmy. And he's played more physical than recently. Like there was one play, I forget who it was, but it was in the neutral zone, and the puck was sitting right there. And normally Timmy would have just scooped that puck up and tried to go with it. This time he said, I don't give a damn about the puck sitting there. He just goes for the hit, tries to separate the man from the puck. And then the Sens were able to, I think Joseph swooped in and stole the loose puck there. So that's a different attitude from Tim Stützle, which is interesting to see here.
Yeah, and we'll see if it can continue. The Senators already back home in Ottawa, and we'll be preparing for tomorrow night's game. For us, it's a trip back to Winnipeg. We'll have tomorrow's episode for you bright and early, and then we'll be back doing this remotely until we head to Ottawa, not this weekend, but next. Pills, your overall impression of 2 games this weekend. We were talking last night that if we were going to win one, the Winnipeg one, probably the one we choose.
I'm so glad we won the Winnipeg one. That was a hostile environment for us to be in. It was the first game of the trip, so we were extra rowdy. It's in the city you live in, so you're puffing your chest a little there too. So I'm really glad they won the Winnipeg one. I kind of thought, Ross, that this game was going to go similar to the Winnipeg game. Similar kind of vibe to it, right? Close game, 2-2. Who's going to get that goal? That's the difference. I was really hoping it was going to be the Sens, like it was in Winnipeg. Ultimately, though, they dropped this one. But for the most part, people in Minnesota were pretty
good people.
Pretty gracious. Yeah, pretty gracious, pretty nice. There was a couple people that Love to get some Canada jokes on us. That's all well and good if that's the angle you want to take, I guess. But
aren't we further north here than like half of Canada?
Well, it depends what part of Canada you're in, but yeah.
Well, half.
Yeah.
Not half, but maybe half the population, because I think we're further north than Toronto and Montreal and Ottawa.
Are we going to do more geography talk? Want to name some European cities?
No. Name cities that are further south in Canada than Minnesota.
I don't think we need to do that.
No, we don't need to do that. You know what we need to do, though? We need to talk about Angus Crookshank. Is it going to be a long-term injury for him, and who could get called up? That's next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. It's your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. And look, I know you guys hear us talk about Game Time all the time. We love Game Time, but it's not just because they're one of our sponsors. Ross and I used Game Time for both games on this trip because we know it's the best place to get your tickets. Ross and I aren't big planners, so we waited the last minute to get a Winnipeg Jets tickets, and it worked out great. We got a great deal on those. Ross was tracking the prices on the app, making sure we were going to get the best deal possible with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and best price guarantee. GameWork takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And hey, it's not just hockey. You can buy tickets on Game Time for all sports, music, comedy, theater, whatever you're into to have a fun night out of the town. Make sure you're checking out Game Time. Game Time is the app that we use, and the Game Time guarantee means you will always get the best price. In this economy, that's clutch. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time's going to go ahead and credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $20 off your first purchase. Sorry, that's Locked On is the code. Terms apply.
Locked On NHL.
Oh,
new code alert.
New code alert. All right. Well, good thing this is why you got a co-host. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the Glebe Central Pub. Go visit the Glebe Central Pub right in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. They've got great food. They've got great drinks, the atmosphere to match. And oh yeah, the Sens shuttle for only $17. You can go to and from the CTC. They will have a shuttle for each of the remaining 3 home games. So get your tickets for just $17 on their website, GlebeCentralPub.com, and make sure that you are leaving your keys at home and making sure the good times come with you. Sue will take you to and from the game. She picks you up an hour and 15 minutes before the game and drops you right back off at the pub at 779 Bank Street. It's right in the heart of the Glebe. It's great walking distance to Lansdowne. So if you're out having a shopping day at Lansdowne, just go check it out. Great vibes, great people. The vibes are free at the GCP. Make sure you visit them at 779 Bank Street and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. All right, Billsy. So not only do the Senators lose 3-2 to the Minnesota Wild on the road, the win streak over at 5. So still no win streaks longer than 5 games since 2017. If that's a stat for you, well, we learned a few extra stats last night. Shout out to John Perlberg from TSN. Got to spend some time with him after the game. He might be the man behind getting us on the TSN broadcast. Some Sens fans,
yes,
as we are. Spot the lie.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny, but great guy. So glad to hang out with him.
Yep.
Make sure you're following him on social media. All sorts of great stats, CFL, NHL, all sorts, and big Sens guy. Let's just put it that way. Big Sens guy, John Perlberg. So love that. Don't love the fact that Angus Crookshank only played 3.5 minutes in this game, got tangled up going into the boards. The team is calling it a lower body injury. I don't want to sound negative, but I don't think that's going to be a 1 or 2 game thing. I think this might be a week or more.
And Ross, this is especially devastating of an injury. First, obviously, friend of the show. We love Crooker. He's a great guy, so you don't want to see that happen to anyone. He's having success up in the NHL. I think he's making a great impression on Jacques Martin and the coaching staff. So obviously you wanted to keep that rolling, but also compounding on top of that is the Belleville Senators are going to miss him if he was going to be able to go back and help them for their playoff push, or maybe even in the playoffs. So that's a crucial guy to lose for both teams in the Ottawa Senators franchise. So really tough news, and we're hoping Kirker gets back on the ice sooner rather than later.
How would you assess his most recent kind of tryout, for lack of a better term?
I think it's been good. I mean, he's been getting opportunities playing with skilled players. He had some time up on that second line for a bit until Matthew Joseph was moved up there just this game. I think he's one of those guys where he kind of breathed new life into this team. When you get a guy that's as positive and has that good energy like Crooker, it really kind of helps boost the morale of the Ottawa Senators that had been down and out recently. And he's a worker out there. Like I think Jacques Martin, his quote was, he's a dog out there. Like he's just every shift you can see he's putting 110% effort in. So it's a big guy to lose, especially because the Ottawa Senators are kind of, in a tough spot trying to find that middle six forward that can either play on that second line or try to breathe some life into that third line, which with Kubalik is just anchored down. And I think Crooker had done a good job no matter what line he was on.
He was called up 5 games ago, and they won all 5 games.
Yeah, well, there you go. I should have just said that, Ross. Nice.
And then he goes out of lineup and they lose the game. I'm not saying that that's kind of the be all end all of it. I mean, he was buzzing early too. He had 2 shots on goal in 3.5 minutes in the game last night. But I also like that they are giving him a real opportunity this time. The last time he came up, it was like 8-9 minutes. It was a 4th line role. Now he was averaging over 11.5 minutes, had a game where he played over 15 minutes in Buffalo. So I think this was a lot more indicative of the type of game you're going to see from Angus Crookshank when he's getting a shift in, shift out basis, even got a bit of power play time. So I think this was a good step for him, and I'm hoping that he can carry this momentum and be kind of another Parker Kelly type next year where the coach can rely on him to bring energy and bring forechecking to the game.
Yeah, and I think he's one of those guys too, a little older than most of the prospects here, and he's kind of shown that there's not much more he needs to get done in Belleville, right? Like he's not a guy where you're like, you want to get another season in the AHL before he's ready. I don't think that's the case with Crooker. I think next season, training camp, there's no reason why he shouldn't be fighting for a roster spot.
Well, we're hoping that Angus Crookshank can get well soon, get back on the ice, if not in Ottawa in time for the rest of the season, in time to help Belleville not only push for the playoffs, but then make a deep run, because he still is the leading scorer on the Belleville Senators right now. Belleville back in action on Friday against Springfield. Saturday, they'll take on Syracuse. And yeah, Crooker still 3 points clear of the team lead. Now, with Crookshank out, we know that the Senators already have 1 extra defenseman in Travis Hamonic.
Yep.
And who knows if Thomas Chabot is going to be back in the lineup. It seems like he's close, but he's not skating with the team fully. So we'll see what happens there. But they're going to need a forward to come up and play some meaningful minutes. So is there someone in particular that should be next in line for a call-up? We'll have that conversation next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys already know FanDuel is the official online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and for a good reason. They're North America's #1 sportsbook. Why would you go anywhere else? You can bet on college basketball, NHL, MLB is getting going now, the NBA, golf season, the Masters are approaching here. So there's lots to bet on. Football, the off season continues. Big Stephon Diggs trade. So how's that going to affect some future bets you might want to make? Maybe sprinkle a couple shekels on the Texans. They look like they're going to be powerhouses. Or you can bet on just any game you want. I had a couple bets that did not go my way, unfortunately, in the Sens game, but I parlayed some baseball games, and that helped recoup some of those green numbers into the account. So you can do all that at FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 you can use to bet on whatever you like if your first $5 bet wins. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon today and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook. Check it out today, guys. FanDuel.
All right, Pillsy, here we are in St. Paul, Minnesota, where the Sens have already taken off back home. They've got another home game, 2 home games in a row for the Ottawa Senators on Thursday and Saturday. Hey, go check out the game on Saturday and get yourself a Tim Stützle bobblehead. He's got the flow going in there as well. So looking forward to seeing all those, everybody bringing home. And hey, if you get an extra one, let us know too. So they play Florida tomorrow, New Jersey on Saturday, and then they'll take off for a 3-game road trip before coming back for that final home game. So out of the remaining games, Pillsy, 3 at home, 5 on the road, including a back-to-back to end the season in New York and Boston. So the schedule, it's winding down. It's winding down. And we're going to miss it when it's gone.
Yeah, we are. That's why we're trying to cherish all these moments. Game up against Florida is going to be interesting. They play the Panthers twice, like you mentioned, one at home tomorrow and then again on the road. So it's going to be interesting to see how they close this season, Ross. We're going to be going all out for that game up against Montreal because as much as we like the draft lottery odds to be as high as possible, we do have some pride and want to finish ahead of the Montreal Canadiens.
Yes, we do. And with that said, there's going to be likely a new forward in the lineup. Is there someone in particular that, whether it's to match what Crookshank's kind of vibe is in the lineup, or somebody that you think deserves an opportunity from Belleville, or somebody that you're like, okay, we could give him a chance and maybe this won't affect Belleville's playoff push as much? Like, how are you negotiating the management aspect of who you're going to call up?
Yeah, it's a bit of an awkward position because it's not a lot of games. So you're not thinking super long term here, but it's enough games that you want to give a proper opportunity to someone without fully derailing Belleville's roster too, as they've got meaningful games left down the stretch here. What is Rourke Chartier's status?
No,
right now?
he's injured. I don't think we'll see him.
No, is it going to be like the rest of the year type thing?
I have no idea. I can't speak on it.
Yeah, we haven't heard much about Rourke Chartier. That's the first guy that popped into mind for me, especially Jacques Martin loves Rourke Chartier's style of play, defensive forward. So I thought that might have been someone that they would take a look at here. I kind of thought that maybe Zach Ostapchuk, that would be a guy that they would give another look. I thought he looked good when he was up here in small bursts. But again, I think that's someone that they want to keep down in Belleville so that he can be a big part of this playoff push here. And obviously we'd love for our guy Igor Sokolov to get the call up here, but he hasn't been getting the calls all year. So it seems like they're comfortable just having him in Belleville. I don't really know what the right answer is here, Ross. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how management approaches this one.
I would like it to be Igor Sokolov.
Same.
I don't think it will be.
That's the thing.
I would like it to be somebody like we saw Ostapchuk. I think for him, it's best to stay in the AHL and be a top 6 center. Him and Halliday is your top 6 centerman down there, and you've got kind of the vets as well. Garrett Pilon, I think Pilsy. I mean, he's second in the team in scoring behind Crookshank. He's got 43 points in 55 games. So he's a guy who I think if you want to give it to a vet who's kind of earned it and been a guy who's been good down there, you can, because a lot of the guys are injured. Chartier, you mentioned. Not only that, Matthew Highmore got hurt when he came up before. So kind of the classic options. The only other one is if you want to kind of see one last go around of what you have with Yuri Smeykal, that could be another option.
Yeah, and I feel like, Ross, I would lean more towards bringing Yuri Smeykal up than PLZ, because you got Crooker, the leading scorer, out, and then Pilon. And then you're taking the 2 top scorers for your team when you're in the midst of a playoff push and you're playing the most meaningful games all season. that would be disappointing for Belleville. So, I guess you're Smakal, but I don't. But then, if your management, like, is he really a part of this team, this franchise's future? Probably not.
Right. So how are you weighing? Yeah, exactly. That's the big debate here.
Yeah.
Is how do you want to weigh having a guy coming up for meaningless games, but almost having it as a tryout going forward, or are you trying to disrupt the least in Belleville? Because I mean, Smakal's got points in 3 straight down there. I mean, you could almost say you want him down there as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just have to wait and see, I guess, what's going to happen there.
No more Boris Kachuks kicking around. We can just grab off another roster and not worry about kind of breaking up, hopefully, a team that can make a push.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll sign Phil Kessel for the end of the season.
Oh, yeah, exactly. The old Scotty Gomez, where you sign after the deadline. It's like, hey, this is just to run out the schedule.
Well, I got to think they're going to go 11-7 against Florida.
You think so? Yeah.
I bet that's what they do for the Florida game.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. And then kind of regroup. You'd think they'd want to at least bring a forward on the road trip afterwards when they're going down south.
Exactly. Yeah, once they hit the road, I think for sure they'll get a forward going. But I think maybe for the Florida game, they just say, hey, let's get hammer in some games here. Let's do 11-7 and see how that goes.
And one thing, no, it will not be Stephen Halliday. Not only is he just getting his feet wet in pro hockey, but he's also on an ATO amateur tryout for the rest of the season. His entry level will kick in at the start of next season. But let us know in the comments, who do you think should be the call up from Belleville, whether it's a guy who's a veteran, or let us know your whole thought process between how you're deciding who should take the place of Angus Crookshank on the NHL roster. All right, Pillsy, final thoughts on today's show.
Final thoughts for me on today's show is, Ross, I hadn't noticed this till today's episode, but you're wearing an OG Sens Central Citizen shirt that is signed by none other than Ross Levitan, Laleem's Martian, and is that Brandon Piller I see over there?
Do you know why?
No, that's why I wanted to bring it up. Why are you wearing a shirt that is signed by the 3 of us? That should have gone to a fan or a listener.
No, I think there's a mistake on one of the signatures, and it was one where they want. I don't know how it happened actually, but we
turn around so people can see it.
I'm not turning around. I can barely keep my eyes open.
You don't need your eyes open to turn around.
No, but it's easier thing to do. No, look, it's the signature. One of them messed up, so I gave them a fresh one.
Nice.
And I said, look, credit to me, good guy alert.
Okay.
I said, I'll take the one that has lost value due to these signatures being on the back.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm glad I got the story there. I was peeking over and I was like, is Ross wearing a shirt signed by himself?
Yeah. This isn't the one that I'm wearing in public very often either. This is more of a, on the pod shirt.
That's great. That was my final thought.
Yeah, great final thought. My final thought is shout out to Minnesota, St. Paul, great host area. I love how, and this is one of those where like having a downtown rink is super cool, where there's bars around, there's hotels.
We're literally
everything.
Steps away from the rink. Like we cross the street and the rink's right there from this hotel. So it's great.
Exactly. So this is the kind of setup hopefully we can have one day in Ottawa, and good stuff.
Final thought.
Whoa.
Shout out Seth Dupal, Locked On Wild.
Yeah.
He's been a gracious host, Mr. Minnesota here helping us out. And he's definitely one of the Locked On hosts that we get along with the most. He's a great guy. If you guys are interested in more Wild content, you got to follow Seth Dupal in the Locked On Wild podcast.
Very well said. That's Brandon Piller. I'm Ross Levitan. Thank you for coming along with the shenanigans over the last week. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.